can finally see face to face. Yeah.
All right, let's just get started. Tell us about a bit about who you are, where you're from, and yeah, let's take it
Cool,
from
cool,
there.
cool. All right. First, it's an honor to be here. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Yay.
Yes, like you mentioned, my name is Linda Iriza, and I'm actually from Rwanda, but I'm currently based in Buluru, which is basically in Western Australia. And yeah,
Wow.
so I've been here for the past 11 years, but it's a long
Wow.
time. I need to go back home.
Yes.
I need to return. I need to return for good. For good. Yeah.
Wow. And you
Yeah.
just recently graduated, and I was like,
Yes.
woo.
Thank you. Thank you. It was
What
such
were
a
you
strange. Oh,
what were you
I was
studying?
I was doing it's just a bachelor's in marketing and economics, but
Wow.
yeah, did I like it? I don't know.
Me too.
But it's
I have a
done.
bachelor's in marketing, but I haven't actually used,
Oh.
yeah. So I think we're similar.
Yeah, we have the same energy, but it was just, I don't know. I feel like I started finding what I like doing. I was still doing, I think the reason why I kept doing the unit I was doing is because like I was doing a lot of the things I love outside while I was
Mm-hmm.
studying. So that kept me
Okay.
sane and then I kept pushing. But it was strange because I actually finished in March, but one because I had to like redo an exam because I failed one, so I had to retake it when I came back. So, and then I passed
Yay!
somehow. And I'm like, 2020 is full of surprises.
Oh
Hi,
gosh.
Portia. Portia is here watching as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that is it's interesting. And like what, because you just mentioned the turnaround, mid doing. So what happened? Like what happened for you to encounter this Africa, for you to encounter
Mm.
this? Did something happen to you, or was it something that's been in your heart for a while?
I think, I don't know, because I was raised like I think a lot of Rwandans could relate, or a lot of people across the continent, I guess. I was raised in a
Mm,
very like patriotic, like house, like all this nationalism and it's great because you kind of grow up, especially when you're no longer, because I left Rwanda when we were 11. So then when we came here,
mm,
it was just such a weird transition, but I didn't feel like I went through like a phase of sort of losing my identity because a lot of like my parents, my mom and dad back then, they were very like encouraging, saying you are Rwandan, that's your identity, and now you can go figure out what that means to you. Um,
wow.
and I feel like being raised in that environment, I've always knew who I am and where my passion is, I guess. And
Wow.
then when I finished high school, that's when like I even went to high school and we were only friends with like all the Africans. So I was literally like it was mostly West Africans and some Southern African actually as well. So it was everyone. So we literally would sit under a tree. It was the most iconic thing. So during like our lunch break, we'd sit under a tree. So then after high school, I was like, you know what? I find myself with this community and it feels good and it feels like home. So
Wow.
everything now that I've been doing since then has always been for the people that I'm surrounded with, I guess. And those are just black people
Wow.
everywhere. Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
so cool. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So, how was it for a Rwandan or just an African growing up in Australia? I mean, like when you
Mm.
think of Australia, all you see is white. So, like even
Yeah.
the people I've encountered, the white people I've encountered, I don't actually think of them mentioning any of the First Nations or just seeing
Mm.
pictures, everything is just white. So, how
Mm.
was it growing up in such a culture?
I don't know. This country, I mean, well, it's not even a country. Like this thing that they made up is very interesting, I guess. So
Wow.
so like growing up in terms of growing up here, they use a word like a lot, which is assimilate. So they want you to assimilate to the culture and whatever culture is here. But then
Wow.
it's like when you assimilate, that just means you've deleted your things that you learned and then you're going to take on a new identity. But I've never
Mm.
really like I've always been such a person. I was because I was raised by really stubborn parents, so I've always just been like I'm not going to assimilate. I'm just gonna be. this black kid who's Rwandan and I eat cassava leaves and I'm good. So yeah, but it's a very strange place, and then now it's even more strange because like you mentioned, I guess there's a lot like the First Nation people of this country, they've like almost been erased out of a lot of the history. And the reason is just for political things as well, because a lot of the treatment that they received till today before like before we're even born, it was horrible. So then they just
Wow.
want to cover up the history, I guess, of this country. And I think, yeah, it's one of those countries where you like race is not talked about,
Wow.
gender is not talked about. There's a lot of things that are just very like, oh, we're chilled. We don't have any problems here. But
Wow.
yeah, so it was very much like that, very quiet place, and yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
And how did the
Mm,
First Nations think of it? Because when I first encountered Australia when I was growing up, like
mm,
you could just see the native people, like in the storybooks and all of that, but
mm.
that not being the reality of what Australia is. So how is it for them?
Mm. I mean, I wouldn't be able to speak on their behalf because that it's not really my story
Mm,
to tell. But from
mm,
like the things that I know is just from like, for example, if this was Rwanda and I was like, you know, an indigenous person of Rwanda, and then I was being treated the way that they treated, it's horrible because
wow.
like when I went to high school, for example, even primary school, I never learned about basic basic history. And what's so interesting is
Mm,
that here, like the people here, they're very, very connected to like healing and their spiritual
yeah,
beliefs, and a lot of like all their dances, they're very connected to their land.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing I've actually learned from like a lot of the First Nation cultures here is that how you respect the land, and you're like, whoa, this
Mm,
is not just a country or a place with borders, but it's something very special, and you can learn things from the trees and things like that. So a lot of those histories, they're not really taught, and
mm,
yeah, and for example, here, like in the state that I'm actually in, we have the highest death in custody, which is mostly made up of First
wow,
Nation people. So yeah,
wow.
yeah. So in terms of stats, they make up like a very small amount of the population, but
Sure,
like 50+% of them are in jail.
sure.
Yeah, yeah. So it's very bad.
Wow, that is so sad. And it's like
Yeah.
literally what's been happening all over the world.
Mm,
Literally, all the
mm,
indigenous
mm,
people or just slaves, people who are enslaved, are the ones who
mm,
are in the prisons, are the ones who are incarcerated,
mm,
are the ones whose voices are never heard and recognized. So how is it
mm.
for you as a black person in Australia? Like, yeah.
Um, I mean, it's growing up, I was very, again, ignorant. So a lot of these conversations that have been had for a long time, whether it's to do with what does feminism look like for an African woman, or just Africans in general, even conversations around gender, I was very late to.
Mm,
So I grew up very, very ignorant, not understanding what being black is, or even because I think this was
mm,
actually the first time I realized that I was, you know, a black person living here just a few years ago. So before I was
wow.
just like, oh, I'm Linda, I'm Rwandan, and my race is not a is not a thing. So I think so that's the one thing that it teaches you. It sort of teaches you to not care about anything outside,
Mm,
or you think that race is not a thing. You think that
yeah,
if someone is dying in another country, it's not your problem. So
yeah.
that's really what this country teaches you. And then as you grow up, you have to almost like go back and try to learn everything. And then it's almost as a black
Mm,
person, you almost feel like it's frustrating because you feel a little bit behind from everyone
sure.
else. Yeah. So
Wow.
that's the frustration that's here. Yeah.
Wow. That is so
Yeah.
interesting.
Mm.
So, like you lived in Rwanda for 11 years, and what made your family say that we are moving to Australia? What was the decision behind that?
Mm. So basically, my dad actually came before us. So he came maybe, I
Okay.
think, 2 years before us. So
Mm-hmm.
he came to actually finish his, I think it was his master's.
Okay.
I don't know. One of the, I don't know. I don't really speak to him, and I don't speak to him much anymore. So I don't really know. I don't remember. But but yeah, so he came to finish his studies, and then 2 years later, he basically sponsored us to come. So it was me, my sister. Oh,
Okay.
you're back.
You back?
Thank
Oh.
God. I was frozen. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
It's okay.
It happens anyway. It is what it is. But yeah, so we came here to join my father, I guess. Yeah,
Wow. And
yeah.
how, like, what was Rwanda's state 11, well, when you guys moved, like, because you
Mm,
guys just went through a genocide, how did the genocide actually affect you guys, and what are your
mm,
views now? Like, how do you see Rwanda now, being away for like 11 years? How do you view Rwanda now? What is Rwanda to you now?
mm-hmm. That's a really good question. I think for me, because I grew up, I was born in 98, so it was four
Okay.
years after the 1994 genocide against the Tutsis. And basically, so I think my parents and a lot of my family members, like my older cousins, a lot of them have had like firsthand experience of what 94 was like. But for
Mm.
example, my mom was actually born in Uganda because a lot of Rwandans actually started moving out of Rwanda in the 60s because
Wow.
a lot of the villages were being burnt then, and like it was almost like families will be strategically killed basically, and the villages will
Wow.
be burnt down. Yeah, so then my mom was born in Uganda because there were refugees in Uganda, and my dad was actually born
Mm.
in Congo because there were refugees in Congo since the 60s.
Wow.
Yeah, so for them, they actually didn't experience the genocide firsthand because my mom didn't experience it, but my dad did because it was actually in Rwanda in 94. Um,
Mm.
but like yeah, so a lot of like my cousins, some of them are survivors, some like a lot of them have
Mm.
lost like their moms and their
Wow.
brothers, and like a lot of the family members have been lost. So I
Wow.
think that's the one of the biggest, I think, effects is that as someone born after 94, one is just like you hear like a lot of names of family members being mentioned, but you don't really know
Mm.
their stories. Especially even around April, like I knew that when I was younger, like a lot of my family members and cousins would never really eat meat during that time, or there was
Wow.
just everyone would be very sad because even certain smells or even seeing meat,
Wow.
yeah, they would like have like almost like like I guess it's PTSD, to be honest. That's um
Mm.
the what's it called, the medical word for it. So it was just those little things, but for me, when I grew up like in 98, we were quite privileged, like where my dad had a good job, my mom was
Mm.
hustling, like my mom is the biggest hustler in the world. She would be jumping, she would be jumping borders and trying to sell clothes and things like that. So my mom would she was selling like clothes and like different things in the city. And then my dad had a really good job as well. So then like so I grew up in a very privileged environment where I almost just had like a normal childhood. Like you play with your
Mm.
friends, you get Christmas presents. So life was very normal, and also a lot of the things about what had happened before were never really talked about, like it wasn't a
Okay.
subject that people brought up.
Mm.
But we would know that when April arrives, we're only going to listen to like certain songs, and we might not eat meat because so and so is coming over, because they can't really, even the smell of meat will throw them off. So
Wow.
those were just the little things, but you know how like yeah, there's a lot of our parents don't really tell us what's going on really. Um,
Mm.
yeah, so then when we came here, so I think I don't really remember much because I was very young, but I think the biggest thing that has changed, because the first time I went back to Rwanda was in 2016. And
Okay.
I think even from my mom's conversation, she was like, whoa, everything looks different. There's like roads everywhere,
Wow.
and places look different from what she even got lost. And she was like, how can I get lost when these used to be my streets? I was on the streets every day. So I think that's, in terms of development wise, like my parents can notice it, but I can't really notice it as much. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So I think those
And
are the biggest changes.
are there still tensions between the Hutsis and Tutsis? Like,
Um, So now I
Yeah.
would say not really. Like in Rwanda, there's not. And also, I think like the biggest thing is that now we don't really identify, like a lot of the youth, even myself, I don't really identify as Hutu, Tutsi, or anything like that, because I just identify as Rwandan. So, and
Mm.
also because a lot of our history has actually also been erased in a sense, because we had very similar to like all the African countries, we had like different um I guess you call them tribes. I don't really know the exact word for it, but you know how like families come from different tribes. It's almost tribes. So we have like
Mm.
more than 20 around the country. But then I guess when the colonizers came, they all made three, and uh, just
Wow.
the history is all, yeah, it's all just mixed up. So now I
Sure.
think a lot of the young people are actually trying to go back and relearn the history. There was a lot of bad, and also to take the good out of the bad, I guess. Um,
Mm.
in terms of, I guess, in the diaspora, that's when sometimes there's a lot of things that have been taught by our parents that you have to go and unlearn about, like you can't hang out with that person or talk to that person or eat with that
Mm.
person or eat at someone's house.
Ah.
So those are just the things that a lot of us are trying to just tell our parents, that you need to, like, we understand what you went through and we just have to find a way to move on, I guess. Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
good.
Mm.
I actually love that. Something, it was on one of your lives, and like how your identity, you said like I'm African first,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel
Mm-hmm.
so important for us to, because even like tribalism is a
Mm-hmm.
colonist thing, it's like from the colonizers, they're the ones who brought about division. So how
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
important it is for us to identify as Africans so that we don't separate within ourselves. We don't create the same thing that was perpetuated onto us.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Exactly. And I think that's where like I'm going towards, and I'm trying to learn more, because I'm just like, when I actually went to Uganda, because like a lot of my family, like on my mom's side, they're still in Uganda. But for
Mm.
example, when I was in Uganda, there's even like there's a certain tribe called Abanyang, I'm gonna pronounce it wrong, but Abanyankole. But basically we're very similar, are very, very similar. And I'm just like, so how does this, like, I don't know, the idea of borders, I'm trying to just trash it and just be like, how can I
Yeah,
be different to so and so, but we have so many similarities. So I'm just like,
exactly.
that's out of the window. So yeah, yeah.
Sure.
And I'm trying to come
I
to
love
SA.
that.
I'm trying to learn about South Africa and what you are all
Please.
about and your culture.
No, come
Yeah,
through. Definitely come through. I'm
yeah.
actually looking at the questions because I know I
Mm,
can ramble. Like,
mm.
yeah,
Me too,
I
me
don't
too.
want us to.
Yeah, yeah.
So one of the questions I asked is, what does Black Lives Matter look like in Oceania? Is there even like a movement, Is there something happening there?
Mm. Sorry, I'm trying to charge my phone. It's okay. It won't die. Um, I might have to flip it. I think in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement here, oh yeah, Mary, yes, there's a lot to learn and unlearn as well. So I
Mhm.
believe in that too. So in terms of the Black Lives Matter, so I think I touched on it a bit earlier. I can't really speak
Mhm.
about, I don't really know what's happening in like so-called New Zealand and like all the other places. So I can only speak about, I guess, the Australia, I guess. So again, this country is a country that doesn't really talk about race.
Yeah.
Even all of us are trying to like relearn, and like Malcolm X, like say as many quotes as you want to. Like there's a lot of people who maybe this year was their first time hearing about Malcolm X.
Sure.
Even let's yeah, and some people it's like the first time you hear about Winnie Mandela, and you're like, who is Winnie? And it's
Wow.
like, oh, so it's just it's you're so they do it as like in a way where you're so sheltered that everything that you should be learning is not really taught to you, even though you experience racism, but you are like, oh, okay, that person is just rude and mean, I'm not going to ever talk to them. But it's like, no, there's
Wow.
a broader conversation to be talked about. So this year has actually been very, very significant, I think, because before there was an actual, we did have a few protests whenever like different things would happen in America, like Trayvon Martin, like everyone. So there was like very small protests happening in this city. But
Mm.
this year was like the biggest protest. And also I really like the fact that people could now resonate the Black Lives Matter happening in the US to what's actually happening in this country and what's always been happening in this country. So a lot
Wow.
of the Black Lives Matter movement was actually led by Aboriginal and Torres Islander people. And they talked about their struggle, their experience with death in custody, their experience in the prison system, their experience
Mm,
in being stolen from their families.
mm,
Yeah, so it was really nice because I think that was the first time ever that I guess the word blackness was seen as like a global thing and people within this country could relate to it.
sure.
When before, for example, when we were protesting, you were only saying, "Oh, I'm going to protest for Trayvon Martin
Mm,
and his death," which is important, but there was no conversation about race or even just seeing if one person is struggling over there, I'm also struggling with them, and I also need to recognize how our struggles, are interconnected. So this has
wow.
only been the first year that has ever happened. Yeah.
That is amazing.
Mm. It's been
Because I
very,
feel,
I think, critical. Yeah.
yeah, that's so true. Because I
Mm.
think, like I shared it on one of our other lives, that the thing that's so powerful about Black people is that when you articulate your voice to the world, when you stand up for
Mm-hmm.
who you are, it's like we give other people permission as well to join, you know? It doesn't become like our thing. It becomes like a
Mm-hmm.
struggle, a fight for everyone else. So we give other people a voice to like recognize that, oh my word, we are also suffering through this
Yes.
thing. Like, oh my word, we are actually interconnected in this thing. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's one
Mm-hmm.
of the goals. I love hearing that because you don't actually hear anything about the the First Nations in Oceania like at all, you
Mm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
And just
Yeah.
indigenous people, even in South Africa, we don't hear much about the San people, you know? Um,
Mm.
and
Mm.
we go to South America as well with the people living in the Amazon. We don't actually get to hear, and it's like they are slowly being wiped off the
Mm-hmm.
face of the earth. And once we actually start standing up for ourselves, we are able to even stand up for other people as well, and allow them to join in with our
Mm-hmm.
fight. So I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That is so
Yes.
beautiful.
Yes.
Sure.
100%. And I think what was really powerful here as well is even with the protests, because they were led by a lot of, First Nation people, but what was great is also a lot of the Africans like here, we sort of also sat down and actually really recognized their stories and were like, okay, wow, this is actually something huge. Because sometimes as well,
Mm,
when you are like, you know your identity and you're like, I'm Black and I'm African and this is my struggle. But sometimes
mm,
if you don't see the First Nation person who you are in their land, you sometimes you don't really see their struggle because you're too focused with your own struggles and
oh,
your community's struggles. So I think it was also very important because a lot of the times we were sitting down and actually like listening to these stories and
sure.
and being able to connect the dots where they need to be connected, and also not being able to connect some of the dots because, for example, me as an African actually living in this country, I have quite a lot of privilege compared to someone who's a First Nation person living in this country.
That's
um
so true.
yeah, so seeing those differences, I guess. Yeah.
Wow, that is so true. And it's across the world actually, because even
Mm,
like Africans, like when I was in America, like we
mm,
have more of a privilege than even the Black Americans, you know. Sometimes we'd be hired before
mm-hmm.
the Black
Yeah.
Americans. And then what about the Native Americans as well? Like we don't even get to hear from their side. So it's so important for us to actually share stories and hear from one
Mm-hmm.
another. Yeah, I think it's also
Mm-hmm.
a respectful thing as well to do.
Yes. Yes. 100%. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So tell us more about Rwanda. Do you even remember? But you left when you were 11.
Yes.
So tell us a bit more about Rwanda.
Mm-hmm. So from what I remember,
Yes.
okay, cool. So what I remember, I don't know, it was so we lived when I was very young, we lived outside of Kigali, which is like the capital city. So we lived in a
Yeah.
place called Mumutara. So we had like a lot of cows. So it's more like cows and a lot of milk. You would drink milk for breakfast, lunch, dinner. When you're thirsty, like I think growing up, I actually never really drank water, which is just very interesting. But so yeah, we would race around that. So that was what was really beautiful. It was that like yeah, there was a lot of cows and yeah. And then when we moved to the city, that's when I started going to school and like because I started my pre-primary and primary in the city. And that was
Okay.
really like that was really fun. Like yeah, again, I grew up like around a lot of privileges. So then I went to like it was a public school, but it was a good public school, and then we'll have like a school bus that will pick us up and take us to school.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun because even afterwards, like a lot of my cousins will just be like, you know, playing around, and a lot of the places are actually still around. So,
Wow.
and other things that I remember is just like the Catholic churches, because there's just so many. Well, there used to be a lot, because
Are you serious?
yeah, so many Catholic churches. Like every Sunday, I'll be in mass. I'll have my little, I forgot the name of it, and like, you know, learning from my grandma how to pray on it. And then when my dad came back, my mom was like, "You're no longer Catholic, you are Christian now." So I'm gonna take you to my church. And then yeah, so I think religion played a huge role, and which made a lot of sense because that's what really a lot of people didn't really get any therapy or any chance to talk about what happened and
Mm.
how they lost. Oh, some people lost their entire family line. So when that
No.
has been wiped away, I think the next thing you have to, you know, attach your faith to something, and that has, I guess, a lot of people attached it to the church. And
Mm.
so that was a big thing. Like church was a huge thing. Um, but yeah, even playing around. I remember with my cousins, we'll literally go to school, come back around 4 p.m. and just play and come back at like 10 p.m. Yeah. So it was one of those
Oh,
things. Yeah. But now it's good. So I've actually been back since 2016. I'm pretty sure I went back in 2018 as well and 2019 as well. So I've like now going back like all grown up, like it's a lot of fun, I think, because I don't know, Rwanda is a very, I guess, very safe country. So basically we
mhm.
will literally like I literally would walk everywhere. So me and my friends will like go clubbing and walk back at like
Mhm.
5 a.m. in the morning at 4 a.m., 3 a.m. or catch a boda or but also I think because safety wise, I think it's safe because almost every street has like a police guard on it as well. So there's
Okay.
people like surveilling and making sure that everything is fine. Um, and yeah, so whenever I go back, it's just like a big party with a lot of people. And there's so many young creative people.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I really like doing when I go back to connect with them.
That's incredible.
No,
And one
no.
question that always comes to my mind, because
Mm,
when you grow up in the West, when you grow up out of your country, a lot of people actually don't like their African identity and never own up
mm,
to it, you know, and they just assimilate and become
mm,
Australian or American, you know, or European. But there's
mm.
only a few like you who actually are in love with the continent. What is so different about you guys? Was it family that influenced and that helped you love Africa more,
Mm.
or just a journey that you took on your own?
Yeah. I think it's a bit of both. The biggest part, I think, it's family played a big role. Like, for example, even right now, my mom doesn't speak to us in English. She's like literally
Mm.
refused. So basically, for like throughout, so I haven't like I understand Kinyarwanda, but when I speak it, like my cousins make fun of me because there's a little bit of an accent and I'm a bit slower. So but it's okay. So I think that's the biggest thing is that my language has actually like my family has pushed me to know my language and really learn about my culture, whether that's like watching like dance videos, like me being forced to like dance and I actually end up loving it. And then I think
Wow.
my personal journey now is that I actually have set it as a goal for myself to actually travel the entire continent and really
Yeah.
like yeah and like learn more. And because I feel like the more I travel and the more people I meet from all across the continent, the more I actually get to understand about myself.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think so. Yeah, for my family, they've pushed me to really be. I don't know. Rwandans are, sometimes we can be very arrogant. So it's almost like a it's a pride, but also arrogance. It's like I'm Rwandan, I'm this and this. So then, so I grew up in an environment like that, which has shaped me to come to really want to learn more about myself. And I think maybe 2 years ago, that's when I actually decided that like all the work that I'm going to be doing in terms of the work that I actually really is meaningful to me, it's only going to be dedicated to the African community or the Black community. And
Mm.
so really making that my intention for everything I do has also pushed me to attach myself to my African identity even more. Yeah.
Wow, that is
Yeah.
so good. I love
Thank
that
you.
because it's
Thank you.
rare. It's rare. I mean, especially in America, it's rare. In America and
Mm,
Europe, people who just grew up there, like they don't even want to associate with Africa, and it's because of
mm,
propaganda, it's because of what the media has put out there, like concerning what Africa actually looks like. So you never
mm,
hear me say that, oh my word, my family is from here and here and here, and this is who I am.
mm,
Yeah, so I love when I encounter people who have lived abroad most of their lives and actually also have an identity, like an African identity and a love for the continent, because I feel that our opportunities of living abroad are actually for us to bring something even better this side, to
mm,
grow,
mm, mm,
connect with the rest of the continent. So yeah, I just love when I
mm.
encounter people like.
Yes.
So what are the advantages and disadvantages of living abroad? And I think we touched on some, but for you,
Yeah.
what have been the advantages and disadvantages?
I think one of the biggest disadvantages is that I kind of feel very displaced, because I've
Mm.
always just wanted to, like I'm always like, oh, I'm moving to Rwanda in 5 years, and then 5 years comes, it's like 3 years, and then 3 years comes, like 2 more years. So I've always, I don't know, yeah, so that's the biggest thing. I feel very displaced, and I feel like I'm not physically I'm not where I need to be. Like there's a lot of restrictions I think to what I can do. Um, but also I've slowly started to come to accepting where I'm at and how what I'm doing can also surpass borders and things like that. So I'm only starting to learn that. So I think that's the biggest disadvantage is always feeling displaced. The
Mm.
biggest advantage is that actually living here has actually connected me to so many different Africans. Like when I went to high school, I went to school with like someone from Togo, and I'm like, I didn't even know Togo was in Africa. And I'm like, shit, I learned that. So I would literally like in terms of our friendship group, we had like someone South African, Togo, Burundian,
Mm.
Congolese, like all these different countries, and like so I think that's the biggest thing that because that has actually hugely influenced me and the way I like we mentioned earlier, like seeing yourself as an African before anything else. So I don't think if I didn't have that encounter and made friends with people like that, I don't think I would have viewed myself so early on like that. So I
Mm.
think that's the biggest advantage. The second advantage is that is what I'm trying to like what I'm learning right now is that I'm starting to be connected to a lot of, different ideas and different ways of doing things, especially from like what I can learn from the First Nation people here. Um, and the other advantage is just like the privileges that I hear, like the money in terms of jobs that you can get and how high your pay can be. Even the like this country has a very good, what's the word? Social something. They give you like money.
Mm.
Social, I forgot the word, but basically the government supports you if you don't have a job. And I
Yeah.
don't think even a lot of other Western countries support people to this extent, I guess.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
wow, that is
Mm.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, let me move on. So, what would you say to encourage people living who've lived abroad, who grew up abroad, what would you encourage them like into embracing the African culture?
Mm. I think the biggest thing is like one, you're going to be able to learn more about yourself, or hopefully you're
Mm,
going to be able to learn more about yourself. And I think that there's a lot of things that we try to deny about ourselves and like hide from our identity, but you can't really hide the fact that you are like African or you have roots in Africa. Um, and also the biggest thing is for me, I'm like those people before you, and you're carrying whatever message, or some people call it a legacy for them, like you're carrying it forward. So really
mm.
I look at it as something that it's like the biggest thing that I value the most is that I'm carrying something forward.
Wow.
So then I feel like a lot of people need to start maybe looking at it like that, saying I want to reconnect back to my roots and learn about my people and actually find out exactly what I'm carrying forward.
Sure.
Because yeah, because I think that's one of the biggest things. And I think the other thing that I always tell myself is that sometimes when I look at like this country itself as well, Australia, and I'm like, I don't really know what Australia is and what being Australia is, because
Mm,
it doesn't make any sense to me. The way this country was created, there's no sense to it. Same thing as
mm,
every other country that has that was forced to have borders around it, and every other continent that has forced borders around it. So, for example, if you are an African living in abroad, but you identify as just, for example, Rwandan, start looking at the borders and be like, the borders actually don't make any sense.
yeah.
And yeah, so break down those things. But yeah, the biggest thing is that you are carrying something forward, and in order to learn it, you need to actually go back to your roots and understand them a little bit more.
That is, yeah, that is so cool. Like imagine introducing, because it would be most Southern Africans, a bit of East, Central, just saying, I'm part of the Bantu people, like, because that's
Mm-hmm.
originally what it looked like. Like, there were no
Exactly.
borders. Bantu were here, and, like, that would be so
Mm-hmm.
incredible.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it would be really sick. And you get so excited because even like languages, you start being like, okay, like my friends from Zim who speak Shona, there's like a little bit of Kinyarwanda and Shona, there's like a little bit of, things that
Wow.
come together. And once you actually start hearing those similarities, you get really excited because you're like, whoa, there's something new to learn. Um,
Wow.
and even your music expands because you're like, now I'm like listening to just South African music and I'm like, ooh. So like, yeah, you actually expand your knowledge in every area. So yeah,
So true. That
yeah.
is so true. Wow, Linda, this has been so informative, like really, really informative.
Oh, bless, bless. Hi, Shurya. My friend, the hater, is here.
So, we'll talk in depth about Nuru Tours. Did I even pronounce it right?
Yes, you did. You did.
Okay. But what inspired you to be part of Nuru Tours and is Amateka? Is it Amateka?
Yes, yes.
And then the soul alphabet. Like what? Like was there a frustration in you and then you were like, okay, I need to do something about it. Like what happened?
Mm. So in short, I guess, because when I finished high school in I don't remember 2016 or something, but basically my really good friend moved back to Nigeria, and then we started a clothing brand together. And then that
Wow.
clothing brand, we started making clothes. She would make it in Nigeria, send it over, we'll sell it, and then we started doing like little, showcases and mini events here and there. And then that
Mm-hmm.
eventually got someone from the African Student Union at one of the universities here reached out to me saying, "Hey, you wanna like create an event?" It was actually for there was an exhibition going on, and it was like a bunch of contemporary Southern African artists actually. They were saying,
Wow.
hey, we're actually traveling with our art. We have this huge space, but it's only like white people coming to see our work. And this is kind of embarrassing because we've made the stories for for Africans. Um, so then, and it was like the most beautiful like artwork that I've ever seen. So then, it was a huge privilege because then we basically had to curate an event that brings in other African people in. So I was like, okay, if you
Mm.
want African youth, then have African youth DJs, singers, and things like that. So we brought them in, and then they had an event there. And then I guess that's how Soul Alphabet was born. But that was all out of a frustration of one, not having enough spaces for us. But back then, I didn't really think of it like that. It was just like, oh, everything is so boring. I want to do more and do something. So that's how Soul Alphabet became. And then afterwards, hi, Manzi. And then
Hey.
afterwards, Manzi is an amazing dancer. He's wow.
Oh.
Which brings me to Nuru Tours actually, because I met him when we were in Rwanda. So yeah, so Alphabet eventually became like this space for young African artists to connect and showcase their work, but mostly here in Western Australia. And then afterwards, I was like, I wanna, travel back home because I already went in 2016, but I was like, I wanna go, and I know that there's other people who can come along. Sorry. With us and actually experience what Rwanda is to us or something. So that's how Nuru Tours was born. And we kind of just made it intentional that, so Nuru Tours is run by myself and two other amazing Rwandans, Shadia and Inwadi. And basically, yeah, so basically we started saying, okay, we want to, one, travel with Soul Alphabet and hold similar like events in Rwanda. But two, only travel with young Black people because we don't want to have to explain ourselves to anyone. Or, sometimes when you travel with other people, you bring them to your country and you feel a little bit disrespected because you're like, you don't want to eat my food. You don't want to, you don't want to talk to my people. So don't ever come back, please. So we were like, to make it easier, we're just going to travel with young Black people who like to travel and love Africa or want to learn more. And that's how that started. And then eventually, Amateka series is basically, like I mentioned earlier, is me forcing myself and also the Rwandan youth living here. We're trying to almost like, it's force ourselves to learn more about our culture and our ancestors and things like that. So that it's, and then whenever I look back at all the things that I do, I never really can connect the dots when when these ideas come to me. I don't really see how the dots connect until you sort of step back and you're like, whoa, this is just like almost the same thing, but it's almost like a child. When you have like a baby, they grow up and they take the first step and they start eating food and they start running. So everything is almost, it started from this little clothing line and then it has now evolved into an older baby. Hi, Cadet. My cousin is here. But yeah, this is my favorite cousin actually. So it's all been I think it's all been like just my want, like I've always wanted to something that brings us back to Africa, but also connects us with like young people like yourself who are in South Africa. Like I want to be connected to you. If I can't physically be connected to you, how can I be virtually connected to you? How can we talk? How can we do things together? And looking at all the projects that I'm doing as just as a child, because sometimes people look at it as, okay, I did this project, it didn't work out, I'm horrible, I failed. But it's like, no, it has now evolved into something else. And
That's so good.
it's going to evolve into something else next time. Yeah.
Wow. That is so good.
Yeah.
Sure. And I can't wait we'll have in the future, just to break down Nuru Tours, because I feel it's so important, especially when I was in America and in the mission trips that they would have coming here to Africa, and the things people would say, and you'd be like, this is horrible, guys. Like, we don't do that. Or just even just tourism, like how people tour Africa, how like you lose the heart of different nations because for you it's just picture perfect. I'm going here, I'm going here, and you don't actually get time to connect to the culture, really connect with the people, and just enjoy yourself being on the motherland. So I can't wait until we talk in depth about Nuru Tours, because it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so you've told us what you've learned about these projects. So one thing I know about you, will you identify yourself as a feminist?
I'm a learning feminist, growing. I'm not there yet. Yeah.
But you have this thing of just observing, like fighting for women's rights, fighting for us to not only have a voice, because we have a voice, but just to speak out louder, and for us to have permission, because this world, we need to always be asked for permission to exist, you know?
Mm.
So what changed that? Because what happened to you to lead you on this journey to love yourself as a woman, and also to voice out and to fight for other African and Black women all over the world?
Mm. Mm. That's a really powerful question. And I think
Mm,
for me, I guess from a very young age, I guess, so my mom she's always been like the number one person in our lives. So she's literally raised all of us, like me and my sister. So like we've always around a lot of women, even like most of my cousins, most of them are just women. So then I grew up only knowing and understanding women. So having that, I think, has always pushed me. Oh, am I frozen? I'm back.
no,
Having
you're good.
that as like as a place to sort of grow up in, has pushed me in many, many different ways and to question different things. Now I have to charge my phone, sorry. Um, okay, let me find a way to put it in here. Ah, I don't know. I don't want to put it on the side. I'll hold it. I'll hold it like this. So yeah, so I think the way I grew up is the biggest thing. And then secondly, I have like a lot of personal experiences, I guess, and personal things that I don't really talk about as much publicly, but that have also sort of pushed me to um there were very negative situations that have pushed me to one, voice up, have a voice and be very loud. And if I don't like anything, I'm going to be very loud and tell you this is not what's
Mm,
going to happen. Be
yeah.
very vocal. So I think I've been in situations where I haven't been like that, and has led me into a lot of different traumatic experiences. But now I'm out of it, and I need to be louder and louder. Um,
Wow.
and also the other biggest thing is that I actually like on a daily, like I learn from so many women. There's a lot of women in Rwanda who are doing incredible feminist work, and from
Mm.
them I just literally everything they say, every post, I screenshot it, save it, and I'm like, I'm gonna buy this book, learn more, read more. So yeah, I've always been, I think, because yeah, when I grew up, like for example, my mother, I think she doesn't identify as a feminist. She thinks that, I don't know, she has her own understanding of what feminism is. But for example, for her, so she's the type of woman who she was a mother at the age of 22. She was very young.
Oh,
But she's like, okay, your father isn't around as much. He's still supporting, but I need to be one, active in your lives, but also hustle and find money. So she will literally
mm.
jump borders and like go to Uganda, hustle things into
Oh.
Rwanda, like phones and things to sell like illegally, and then go and like sell it. Because she was, and no one knew about this. And like eventually you're like, okay, like she's actually able to support us in that sense, because she's taught herself that in order to survive, you actually have to one, do everything yourself, or like,
Mm.
yeah, you can't wait for anyone to sort of do things for you. You have to be the first person to take the first step.
Mm.
So yeah, so I think she's the biggest influence in my life. And now it's like a lot of different African women on the continent who are teaching us for free. We should be paying them,
We
but
should.
we should be. Every Twitter should do a thing where you can subscribe and you give money to people.
That is so true.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure. And do women have a voice in Rwanda? Because I know from the outside, it looks perfect, you know.
Mm.
And then even in parliament, even in all these spaces, there are a lot of women. Is that really the reflection?
Mm. Well, it's not perfect
Mm.
because One, a lot of the I wouldn't speak for them, but so I'm not speaking for them, but I know that from experience, even like a lot of the root like a lot of women living in rural parts of Rwanda, I don't think they have much of a say in a lot of things that happens to them. Like you could see it
Wow.
in like a lot of children where you have huge cases of like um teenage pregnancies, but most of them are actually from rape victims and different things like that. Hi, Hamis. Hamis is an amazing dancer from Uganda. He's incredible. But but yeah, so I don't think it's perfect. And then the other thing is a lot of women in parliament actually it's great that they're there, but also there's a frustration where things are not being done as fast as we would like them to be because, for
Sure.
example, I recently learned about how some of the biggest private schools in Rwanda, and these are like huge, huge private schools with like people pay so much money and things like that. So they actually ask you for a pregnancy test every semester, every term, where it's a boarding school
Oh,
where young girls literally and yeah, it's like sent a letter saying, hey, not only do you need to pick up your uniform or your books or this and this, you need to go get a pregnancy test and give us a
no.
certificate that you're not pregnant. So
Wow.
I was like, so if you have women in like a lot of women in parliament, but these things that are still happening, they're not really talked about. It's very frustrating. And I think only recently, abortion is still, I'm not, might not be true. I don't know if it's true. My facts might not be correct, but I think abortion might
Mm.
still be illegal because I know that last year there was a lot of talks about a lot of young women who were being put in jail for aborting their pregnancies. Sorry,
Wow.
terminating their pregnancies. So yeah, and I'm pretty sure some of those women are still in jail today. So
Wow.
on paper it looks great, but there's a lot of things that need to be done on the ground in a
Mm.
lot of, and not just in Kigali. Like in Kigali, there's so much privilege, I guess, but when you go
Mm.
outside, things change slowly and slowly. Even culturally, there's a lot of sayings and things, and that always bring you back to like, oh, no, since I'm a girl, I need to humble myself and not be as loud and not do this and not sit like
Wow.
this. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
That is so interesting. So you
Mm.
got a lot of work to do just on the African
Yes.
continent as a whole.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever going to be a point where there's no longer any work that needs to be done, but I also feel like there's a lot of basics that have been missed out on. And
Mm.
I think we need to fix those basics can be fixed very quickly, but people are just taking their time with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So what would
Mm.
you say to a young person, especially women, because I feel it's important for us to, you don't even have to embrace the whole feminism or feminist culture, but
Mm.
for you to know how powerful your voice is and for you to know that this world is not created for women, like the structure is not created for women's rights, so that we
Mm.
need to fight better for our children. So what would you say to a young person, like to encourage them? And you don't
Mm.
even need to be a feminist, but just to know your rights as a woman, and to find your voice, and to be loud about it, to not be apologetic about it.
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest thing is just always question everything. Like
Mm.
always be like that little, have you seen like those little 5-year old kids? They always want to know like, hey, what's that color? What's that car? What's that big truck? Where is it going? So be very like question everything. So even the way your family members speak, or the way if you're going to dinner or eat, or you're going to a party, for example, um notice if the women are in the kitchen and the men are just like sitting down and having conversations and laughing, and then the women are rushing to cook everything, they're sweating,
Mm.
they're dying, they're putting in the work. So question why is that the case? Like why is that the case? And also ask the people around you, and if there's pushback from them, be like, let that push you to actually go somewhere else and ask questions. Whether
Mm.
that's like going online and ask questions, or I feel like even the biggest thing is actually that feminism has taught me is it has given me names of these incredible women who've came before us and who are still here, who've written so many books that you can literally read about like love and self-love and image and to so many range, like a range of different things that you can learn about. So if you get pushback from your family members for being so curious, learn about these different names and read
Mm.
one or two of the articles, because one of them is going to touch on exactly what you felt like and what that pushback is coming from and what that culture is like and how it's sort of hindering you as a woman, especially as an African woman. So I
Mm.
think, yeah, I think only recently, so I've always been that curious kid who's always asking questions, but only and I've received so much pushback from everyone. They have this word in Kinyarwanda where they call you like inshinzi, which means like you're a girl who's in everyone's business, wanting to know things, and it's like such a negative thing. So now I've just
Yes.
gone to books. I'm trying to find books and yeah, learn from different people who've written this stuff.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is deep. And I feel that a lot of the women, or some of the women who have gone before us, they rejected feminism because it was so white, it was
Mm-hmm.
white
Mm-hmm.
supremacist. They call it white supremacy on heels.
Yes.
So, so for
Literally.
yes, it literally is white supremacy on heels. Yeah. I feel that Karens are the most dangerous. Like there's the male racist, but yeah, Karens are like they
Next
are
level.
dangerous.
Mm-hmm. 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 They
No,
are.
like so for us to actually look into people who look like us from around us who embrace this identity and actually learn from them what it actually looks like for an African woman or a black woman to be a feminist or a womanist, whatever
Mm-hmm.
whichever way you actually, or whichever team you actually want to embrace. So that's really
Mm-hmm.
powerful. I love that.
Yes, thank you. And yeah, and I think people have to understand that yeah, there's no end to this journey. And even the books that you read and stuff, question them. Even the posts, because sometimes even from these amazing feminists and stuff like that, you can still question why do they think like that? Why is it that? So ask them
Yeah.
these questions. And not just because sometimes I feel like I don't know, we've been conditioned this way where it's like, okay, I'm gonna follow, look up to this person and follow what they're saying, and this is the messenger, this is the message, and I'm not gonna question it. But
Mm.
question the message, question basically everything. And once you start doing that, that's when for me that's where I'm at right now, because I'm trying to train my brain to critically think. And I think a lot of us haven't had the chance to grow up with that school when we were younger. So you have to teach your brain how
Mm.
to really criticize everything. Look at everything
Mm.
critically, not criticize everything. Look at things critically. Yeah.
That's so true, especially for Africans. In the African culture where you just do as you're told and you don't question
Hmm.
anything. Um,
Hmm.
especially if you're a woman, like this is really important.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Sure.
Yeah. It's your life is on the line. Like your life and those who will
Yeah,
come after you is on the line. Yeah. Yeah.
literally. Guys, if you have any question for Linda, please send them through because we are almost towards the end. But my last question for you is what is your heart for Africa? What is your vision for Africa? What are your dreams
Mm.
for Africa?
A big question. Let me take a breather. I think right now, like those, like my answer might change tomorrow, the day after that, a few years down the line might change, or it might stay the same. But I think for me, my heart for Africa is that I have decided to actually, like I mentioned it earlier, like my commitment, my intention in everything that I do is to serve the continent and to serve the
Mhm.
people within the continent, because that's like at the end of the day, that's me serving myself as an African, but it's also serving the community that I really, really, really care about. So
Mm,
my heart, I guess, for Africa is to give myself and extend myself to this continent and almost, yeah, so give myself to the continent. That's my biggest thing.
mm,
Um,
wow.
and I think in terms of my dream for Africa is that I really, really, really want as many young Black people all across the world to really see that we are all connected. I think that's
Mm,
when, once you actually see that the person next door to you, the person in South Africa, the person everywhere is like, your sister and brother, and their struggle is your struggle, their win is your win. I think once you start having that mentality, you start really seeing what community is, because community is this
mm,
extended big family that you celebrate with, you cry with, and things like that. So I think that's my biggest dream. I really want as many young people to have that same drive, because I feel like a lot of leaders who came before us, they've had a very similar drive. Like Thomas Sankara had a
mm,
very similar drive. Winnie might
mm.
like Winnie, who I'm still learning about recently, just learning about Winnie Mandela, but I feel like she had the same drive. If she's called Mama Africa, like she has to have the same drive. Like so
Yeah.
it's in her policies that it has to be there. So I think people who came before us, they've wanted us to carry this thing forward. And now it's really
Mm.
up to us to really understand what that is and carry it forward for them and see, yeah. So that's my biggest dream for Africa. Yeah.
Wow, that is incredible. I love that.
Thank
And
you,
then
thank
I asked
you.
you about if someone were to give you an opportunity if you were given an opportunity to live in any three countries in Africa, which countries would you live
Mm,
in and why?
okay. This is hard. This is
I
really hard.
know.
I think, okay, so I think one, I really like Rwanda because I feel like that's home, and I just really
Mm,
love going back because I'm relearning, like when I go back I relearn my language, but I just feel like this is where I'm meant to be. So that's number one.
yeah.
Number two, I would say like, oh, this is hard. Can I? Okay, there's a tie. So number two, there's a tie. So it's either Uganda, because I feel like Uganda is just it's a lot of fun. But the only reason why I'm scared to
Mm.
like live there is because it's too much fun. Like there's no, if you don't have someone to ground you, it's in 1 year you will just be, I don't think I'll be myself in 1 year. So it's either, so the tie is between Uganda, but I would need someone to ground me in order to live there, or something to ground me and keep me busy, or else I'm gonna go crazy. Or Senegal. I've never been to Senegal, but it just looks really, really
Yay.
beautiful, right?
Mhm,
Everything just looks so
mhm.
beautiful. And I think the only reason why it's tied is because they speak a lot of French, and my French is like zero right now. And yeah, so and
Me
I used to
too.
speak French. I used to speak French, and I was
Really?
like, yeah, I was
Yeah,
fluent.
because you
Like,
guys speak
cause
French in Rwanda. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
I literally did my whole like primary school in French, and then I came here and language was gone.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
yeah. I need to ask. I'll ask my therapist about how I can gain. What traumatic things did I go through to lose a language? I
Yeah.
need to know. I need to know. The other one actually, this is not even biased or because I'm going live with you, but South Africa. South Africa, like only because I feel like, I don't know, it's huge, but I feel like even art wise, like
Yes.
art, a lot of those things, you're very ahead. Like, well, not ahead, but you are very, like, it's a critical scene, I guess, to be in, especially in South Africa.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
We are honored. We are really honored.
Yes, you're doing your thing. Like South Africans are loud and proud
So
and
loud.
very, yes. I just don't like the white South Africans though. I don't know.
Yeah.
Some of them.
Some of them, they are actually incredible ones, but it's just maybe like 2%
It's
of the
bad.
white
Yeah.
population. Okay, there's a
Yeah.
question in the question box,
Okay.
which says, "What does it mean to be African to you right now?"
Mm, that's a good question. I think to me, it means, I don't know. It means everything to me to be African right now. And it also, I don't know. I think it means that I'm honoring my those who came before me, my ancestors. So I think I
Mm.
am, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing to be African right now, in especially in a world where just so many things are happening. But the good thing is that a lot of young Africans, especially even when you look at Nigeria, a lot of young Africans are voicing up the voices and saying, I'm tired of this and we
Yeah,
want change. And the reason
yeah,
why they want change and the drive behind that is because they really love their country and they're fighting for their
yeah,
country, literally. And I think
yeah.
even for me coming from Rwanda, like in terms of the liberation struggle that was there, like my
Mm.
parents and things like that, that were fighting for their country. Like even my mom who grew up in Uganda, she was taught to love her country. So like even all these things
Mm.
that's happening, it's out of a place of love and wanting for things to be better for your country because you love it that much that you actually care. So I think, yeah, for me to be African right now, it means honoring those who came before me, whose name I'm still learning to learn, I'm still trying to learn, and whose stories I'm still trying to learn as well. And hopefully,
Mm.
yeah, because I always say that even this year, I started telling myself that all these ideas and thoughts that I have in my head, they're not really mine. I don't think they're mine because even my mom sometimes looks at me and she's like, you're gonna be crazy in maybe 2 years. Because I go to sleep and I'm like, oh my God, let me write this down quickly before I sleep. So, so now I'm starting to like understand that there's something bigger happening, or
Mm.
there's something guiding me, and
Wow,
that something has to be the people who came before me, I think.
so good.
Yeah.
That is so good. And then the next question is, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh,
I know that's a
okay.
hard one.
That's a hard one. Okay. Let's manifest. Let's manifest this whole thing. And you have to also answer this question because we're manifesting right now. So, I mean, in 5 years, 5 years is very soon. So one, I really see myself not living here anymore. I don't really want to live in Australia anymore. I want to be, whether I'm in Rwanda, whether I'm in anywhere, South
Mm.
Africa, Uganda, I just want to be on the
Mm.
continent. And I see
Mm.
myself on the continent working with people who I really, really want to work with and
Yeah.
continuing the work that I've started here in Australia, I guess, and continuing it there with the people who are there in the community that's there and working with them and pushing and evolving these ideas and
Mm.
not just forgetting about the community that we've built here in Australia, but also finding ways that we can continue to connect and really remove this idea of borders and that borders are the things that are stopping us.
Yeah.
I don't think that's longer like it shouldn't be a thing that we think about anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I see myself back home working and connecting people.
That's good. I love that.
Yeah. Changing because one, it saves you a lot of like time because like right now a lot of the things that many of us are doing is really relearning everything and going through
Mm.
this journey of like asking and not knowing where to ask. Like a lot of us who go to like these universities, like especially here in Western Australia, like there's still no discussion, there's literally no like there's not many people that you can actually go up to and as a lecturer or as a teacher and ask them, hey, what do you think about this, can I learn more of this? um
Mm.
so I think that really needs to change because I don't know, education is the biggest thing, like to everything. It's the
It is.
it's the concrete to everything, so it's yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the last question, I hope I don't even butcher it, but it was like how do you help the First Nations? Which ways can Africans actually assist with the First Nations in Australia?
I think the biggest thing is that, like, for one, is really understanding that one, we have to talk to First Nation people in this country, and ask them exactly what they need. And I think
Mm.
also the other perception is removing the idea that one,
they need help, they need to be saved, because that's the whole conversation around, like, you know, white saviorism and like wanting to save everyone and things like that. So I think one, before you even reach out to like the First Nation people in this country, is understand that you have your own built-in ideas that you have to actually remove, and you can't really look at the people and be like, I'm gonna help you and change your life. And it's like, but who are you to say that? Like, who are you as an African, especially coming from similar experiences and similar struggles, to go and perpetrate that on the next person? It's not really a nice feeling. So I think what the biggest thing that we can actually do is really learn from a lot of the First Nation people in this country, and like learn about the culture and how connected they are to their land, and what being on this land, and what are the names of this country, and that we're on. And yeah, so really like doing, like, we're basically there to work together as a community, but also we're actually going as Africans. There's a lot that I feel like especially we can learn from a lot of First Nations in this because I don't think, for me, when I went back to, like, now when I go back to Rwanda, I think my understanding and respect for the country and literally just the land is going to be on another level, because I've sort of met people who talk about the land in a very poetic way, while when we're back, things I would talk about that in a very poetic way, it's always like a lot of things about, you know, cows and in our milk and things like that, and even our dancing, the grace behind it is almost like, you know, how graceful cows are back home. So that's something we respect a lot, and it would be nice to, on top of that, to add the addition of like the land. And so I think one, so I think check yourself first, ask how we can be a community together, and how we can come together, and what can we learn from each other. And
That is so good, because the indigenous people have this, they still have their roots intact, like more than any other people group. They still have even their knowledge, even though people are trying to wipe the indigenous out, but they still have this knowledge and this care for the land, this care for its people. Because even with Native Americans and some people group, even in like Asia, there's this understanding of animals, there's this understanding of how nature works, there's this understanding of and respect for the land, for the soil, that Africans also have had, and it's been erased, or it's been demonized because of colonization, that we need to actually, that's one thing we could actually learn from the indigenous people throughout the world, is how do we tap back into aspects of our identity, and go back to our roots, you know?
yeah, I agree.
All right, guys. Do you guys have any other questions? Let me check if I actually got to everything.
Okay. Oh, but everyone watching, thank you so much. Like, people are actually watching this. I'm always on the side of like asking questions.
I know.
Yeah. So now answering is
Today.
like, weird.
So yeah, you've answered the 3 nations. Oh yeah, if you were given money to just travel to 3 countries, like for over 3 months, like someone would give you money, like over the next 3 months, you have the opportunity to travel to 3 nations. Which nations would they be?
Okay, so this is crazy, because I'm trying to find money, because I'm trying to travel next year. I don't want to, like, literally 6 months. So let's manifest again. So basically, next year I really, really want to go back in of course, Rwanda, spend about like 3 months there, because there's a few projects I really, really want to work on, but I need a lot of funding for. And then the other place, excuse me. Hello? I'm back.
Yeah, you're back. I can hear you.
Thank God. So I think, yeah, one is Rwanda because I really want to do a few projects there. I also want to go back to Uganda because there's a few projects I want to also do in Uganda. And then the other place I really want to go to, as mentioned earlier, was Senegal because I think, I don't know, it looks really beautiful and there's a lot of amazing people that I would like to connect with and learn more from them. Yeah.
Ooh, Senegal. I feel West Africa is on everyone's mind, you know?
It is. It really is.
So, then the other question is, what do you consider yourself? A politician, an activist, Linda?
This is a big question. This is a big question. This is what my mom asks me. She asks me this question every day. She's always like, what do you actually do? What do you do? Because she's like, you're always on Instagram, you're always on your phone. What do you actually do? What's your job? So, I don't know. I think you said it. I think I just consider myself as Linda, and I don't have any. I won't give myself any titles because when I give myself titles, I think it boxes me into being this one thing. And two, I don't think I can actually pay. I knew it was Shulia who asked this. Because she's my number one hater, as I said. But yeah, I think having all these different titles, it boxes me to become only this one thing. There's nothing wrong with these titles, but also, secondly, I feel like I haven't really done as much justice to like being a politician, activist. I don't think I've done enough work to earn that title as well. So yeah, I'm just Linda. I'm probably going to just be
I love that answer. I do. Yeah. I think and probably because of our past, we've strived to have identities with names, you know. But I feel that our generation is like, this is who I am, and I have other titles to my name, but I'm not just one thing. I'm not just one person. I'm not just a teacher. I'm not just this and this and this, you know. So I feel that's the best answer to give.
Yeah.
Right, Linda, it was so good. Do you have any last words to say?
No, nothing much. I want to say a huge thank you. Thank you for the work you do. I see all your lives. Thank you for inviting me, and we need to link up.
Yes, definitely. No, thank you so much for saying yes. Thank you. I know Aussie time, oh my word, is like the other side of the world. I'm so happy that I'm in South Africa and not in the States. Oh my gosh. But thank you so much for availing yourself. Thank you so much for the things that you are doing. And yeah, I just know that they're going to continue to unravel. They're going to continue to grow. But thanks for being an amazing inspiration to so many of us. So many people are looking up to you. Don't forget that.
Oh my God, no. No, thank you. Honestly, because I think, I don't know, it's an exciting time to be connected to everyone because we can all like learn so much. Like, I don't know, I learned so much from everyone and I'm like, whoa, this is so cool.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Linda, for joining us for Africa Speaks, episode 6. You have certainly been an inspiration. A lot of people, I think you guys need to listen to this again because it's been so good. It's been so informative. And thank you so much. Hey, have a good evening. Rest well and have an amazing week.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Bye.